I've always believed in letting actions speak louder than words, and perhaps that's why I never felt the need to announce my achievements to the world, especially not to Anna, my wife. To her, I was just David, her husband who brought home an average paycheck and lived a quiet life. She never asked too many questions about my work, and I never volunteered information. That was fine by me. The less she knew, the less she could weaponize if things ever went south. For context, I'm the CEO of a mid-sized company, a position I earned through years of hard work, discipline, and more sleepless nights than I care to admit. But I've never been one to flaunt titles or boast about success. I preferred to let my work define me rather than my title. Anna never showed any interest in my professional life, assuming I was just another regular employee in a sea of office workers. That suited me just fine. You see, when we got married, I didn't hide my career from her. I just didn't make it the center of our relationship. I wanted to be seen as more than my job, to build something meaningful with her that wasn't tied to material wealth or status. But over the years, I realized Anna wasn't the person I thought she was. Her priorities shifted, and with them, so did her attitude toward me. She started treating me like I was just a supporting character in her story, someone she could lean on when convenient and dismiss when I wasn't needed. My quiet nature became a target for her criticism. She'd call me passive, unambitious, even lazy at times. Little did she know the hours I put into building a business that provided for her every want and need. I didn't mind her misunderstanding me, at least not at first. I figured everyone's entitled to their opinions, and maybe I hadn't done enough to show her the depth of my efforts. But her dismissive tone grew sharper, her words cutting deeper. What started as small criticisms snowballed into full-blown disdain. And through it all, I stayed silent, absorbing her jabs like a sponge, hoping the storm would pass. But storms don't just pass. They grow until something breaks. Anna never asked me about my work, but she had no problem talking about hers, often comparing our contributions as if I was slacking off while she carried the weight of the household. I wanted to tell her about the sleepless nights, the endless meetings, the pressure of running a company, but something held me back. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was a subconscious test to see if she could appreciate me for who I was without the flashy title. Spoiler alert, she couldn't. And so, I played the role of the quiet husband, the one who never made waves, never contradicted her. It wasn't because I lacked the confidence to speak up, I just didn't see the point. Actions, I reminded myself, always speak louder than words. Looking back, I wonder if I should have set the record straight sooner. If I had told Anna who I was and what I did, would it have changed the way she treated me? Or would it have made things worse? These questions lingered in the back of my mind, but I never found the answers. Instead, I let her build her version of me in her mind, a foolish husband, as she liked to call me. Little did she know, the foolish husband she dismissed so easily was the man pulling strings she couldn't even see. And one day, she would come to learn just how wrong she had been. But by then, it would be too late. I wasn't just her husband, quietly putting up with her tantrums. I was David, the boss, the provider, the one who kept everything afloat. And soon, she would realize that. But for now, I let her live in blissful ignorance, oblivious to the storm that was brewing on the horizon. Actions, I reminded myself again, always speak louder than words. It didn't happen overnight. The cracks in our marriage started small, like hairline fractures that most people wouldn't notice at first glance. But over time, they widened, deepened, until they became impossible to ignore. At first, Anna's dismissive tone and sharp remarks stung, but I brushed them off. Marriage isn't perfect, I told myself. Everyone has bad days, and sometimes those bad days spill over into the people you care about. But with Anna, the bad days became the norm. Her words weren't just sharp. They were calculated, designed to undermine me. She'd sigh dramatically when I suggested ideas, or roll her eyes if I mentioned anything that didn't align with her expectations. "You're too passive, David," she'd say. "Why don't you ever take charge of anything?" The irony wasn't lost on me. If only she knew how many decisions I made daily, how many crises I resolved before they even reached her radar. I wanted to tell her, to lay out everything I did to keep our lives running smoothly, but a voice in my head always stopped me. Would she even care? Or would she find a way to twist my words into another weapon? It wasn't just the words, though. It was her attitude. Anna carried herself like she was the only one holding our marriage together, like she was the glue, and I was just a piece of the furniture she happened to own. She'd talk about her contributions to the household with pride, listing off expenses she covered as if she were balancing the national budget. "Do you know how much I had to spend on groceries this week?" she'd say, waving receipts in my face. "You wouldn't survive a day without me managing this house." I wanted to tell her about the monthly budget I meticulously planned, the accounts I balanced to ensure she could shop without worry, but I didn't. Not because I was afraid, but because I realized something crucial. No explanation would ever satisfy her. The worst part wasn't her attitude toward me. It was her lack of regard for the life we were supposed to be building together. She spoke as though the marriage was hers alone, something she carried on her shoulders while I sat idly by. There was no acknowledgement of partnership, no sense that we were in this together. And then there were the comparisons. Oh, the comparisons. She loved to remind me of what her friends' husbands were doing. "You know, Rachel's husband just got promoted. He's the VP of his company now," she'd say, glancing at me with thinly veiled disappointment. I wanted to laugh every time she said something like that. Rachel's husband? A VP? I could buy his company if I wanted to, but I kept that to myself. The comparisons weren't about ambition or success. They were about control. Anna needed to feel like she was superior, like she had the upper hand in our relationship. At some point, I stopped arguing. It wasn't worth it. If I challenged her, she'd just twist my words, and the argument would spiral into something far more toxic than it needed to be. So, I became quiet, not defeated, but observant. I watched her, listened to her, and cataloged every slight, every insult, every dismissive comment. And through it all, I wondered, how did we get here? When did the woman I married become someone who saw me as a burden instead of a partner? I still held on to hope back then, hope that maybe she was just stressed, or that something external was causing her to lash out. But as time went on, it became clear that this wasn't a phase. This was who she was, and who she had decided I was. A man who wasn't worth her respect. It's strange, isn't it? How you can love someone and still feel like a stranger in their presence. That's how I felt with Anna. I loved her, or at least, I loved the version of her I thought I knew. But the person she had become? That person was a stranger, and I didn't know how to reach her. So, I stayed quiet. I kept my head down and did my job, both at work and at home. I let her think she was in control because, at the time, I thought it was easier that way. But deep down, I knew the truth. The marriage was a facade, and sooner or later, something would happen to shatter it completely. And when it did, I'd be ready. I always knew Anna's temper was like a lit fuse, short and volatile. But nothing could have prepared me for the explosion that came one fateful evening. It started like any other day. Work, dinner, and the subtle tension that had become the norm in our house. I was sitting in the living room, exhausted after a long day, while Anna flitted around the house, muttering under her breath about something that was apparently my fault. "You never do anything right, David," she spat out as she slammed a cabinet shut in the kitchen. I didn't even bother asking what she was referring to. After years of hearing the same refrain, it had lost its sting. I stayed quiet, letting her vent, hoping she'd tire herself out. But that night, she wasn't going to let it go. She marched into the living room, arms crossed, and fixed me with a glare that could have melted steel. "Are you just going to sit there like a lump? Do you ever take initiative in anything, or do you enjoy being useless?" she snapped. I looked up at her, calm as ever, and said, "Anna, what exactly do you want from me? If you tell me what's wrong, I can help." That was the wrong thing to say. It always was. She didn't want help. She wanted a fight. What I want is a husband who doesn't act like a fool. "You're always so passive, so clueless. Do you even care about this family, or are you just here for the free meals?" I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my composure. "I care about this family more than you realize," I said evenly. She laughed, actually laughed, and shook her head in disbelief. "Care? You don't even know what that word means, David. If I left tomorrow, you wouldn't survive a week without me. You'd be lost, like a little boy without his mother." It was the kind of statement designed to provoke, to cut deep, and for a moment, I let it sit there, hanging in the air between us. "Is that what you think?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. She didn't hesitate. "That's exactly what I think. You're nothing without me, David. You'd fall apart if I wasn't here to keep everything together." I stood up then, meeting her gaze, and for the first time in a long time, I let her see the fire in my eyes. "All right," I said simply. "If that's how you feel, then I'll leave." She blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "You said I wouldn't survive without you." "Let's test that theory," I said, heading toward the bedroom to pack a bag. I could hear her sputtering behind me, trying to process what was happening. "David, don't be ridiculous. You're not actually leaving. Stop being dramatic." But I didn't stop. I grabbed a small suitcase, threw in a few essentials, and walked back into the living room. Anna was standing there, arms still crossed, but her confidence was faltering. "You're really doing this? Over a stupid argument?" she asked, her voice rising. I zipped up the suitcase and looked at her. "This isn't about an argument, Anna. This is about respect, or the lack of it. You've made it clear how you feel about me, and I think it's time I stop pretending it doesn't matter." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. For once, she was speechless. I walked past her, suitcase in hand, and paused at the door. "Take care, Anna," I said, and then I left. As I walked down the street, the cool night air hitting my face, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't running away. I was reclaiming myself. The morning after I left, I felt an odd mix of relief and apprehension. I had walked out of a marriage that had been eroding for years, and while I wasn't second-guessing my decision, I was curious to see how Anna would react. Would she apologize? Call me? Or would she let her pride dictate her response? Either way, I wasn't about to bend. That day, I decided to throw myself into work. I arrived at the office early, greeted my assistant, and dove into a mountain of tasks. For once, the office felt like a sanctuary, a place where I was respected, where people valued my contributions. It was a sharp contrast to the way Anna treated me, and it reaffirmed that leaving was the right choice. By mid-morning, the office buzzed with the usual energy. Meetings, emails, phone calls, it was business as usual. But things took a turn when my assistant, Sarah, popped her head into my office. "David, there's been a slight commotion in the conference room," she said, her tone cautious. "A commotion?" I asked, looking up from my laptop. She nodded. "Your wife, Anna, is here?" I froze for a moment, processing her words. Anna was here? At my office? She'd never shown the slightest interest in my job before, so why now? "What does she want?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "She's asking for you." Loudly, Sarah added with a hesitant smile. I sighed, standing up and straightening my tie. "All right, let's see what this is about." When I entered the conference room, there she was, Anna, pacing back and forth with an air of frustration. The staff seated at the table looked visibly uncomfortable, unsure whether to intervene or leave. "Anna," I said, stepping into the room. My tone was calm, professional. "What are you doing here?" Her head snapped toward me, and she immediately launched into a tirade. "David, do you think you can just walk out on me and ignore me like this? Who do you think you are?" The irony of her question wasn't lost on me. "Anna, this is my workplace. If you have something to discuss, we can do it privately," I said, motioning for the staff to leave the room. Once the door closed, she turned to me, her frustration morphing into confusion. "Why is everyone acting like you're in charge here?" "Because I am," I said simply, sitting down at the head of the table. She blinked, clearly not understanding. "What are you talking about? You're not the boss. You've always said you're just an employee." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "I never said I wasn't the boss, Anna. You just assumed I wasn't." Her jaw dropped. "Wait, you're the CEO? Of this company?" I nodded. "Yes, and have been for years." The room fell silent. Anna stared at me, trying to piece together the implications of what I just said. "So all this time, you've been running this place?" "And you never told me?" she finally asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "I didn't feel the need to," I replied. "You've made it clear you don't respect me, so what difference would it have made?" She opened her mouth to argue but stopped, her face flushing red. For the first time in years, Anna looked unsure of herself. "I didn't mean," she started, but I cut her off. "Anna, stop. You meant every word you've said to me over the years. You've treated me like I was beneath you, like I wasn't worthy of your respect. And now that you know who I really am, you're suddenly interested? It's too late for that." Her expression shifted from shock to desperation. "David, I didn't know. If I had known, I wouldn't have." "But you didn't know," I interrupted. "And that's the point. Your respect for me should never have depended on my job title or my income. It should have been based on the person I am." She stared at me, speechless. For once, the roles were reversed. I was the one holding the power, and she was the one scrambling to keep up. "I think we're done here," I said, standing up. "Please don't come to my office again. If you want to talk, you can call. But I'm not interested in hearing apologies or excuses right now." I walked out of the conference room, leaving her standing there, stunned and silent. Back in my office, I sat down and took a deep breath. I had expected Anna to react poorly when I left, but I hadn't anticipated her storming into my workplace. Still, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. For years, she had underestimated me, belittled me, and now, the truth was out. I wasn't the passive, foolish husband she thought I was. I was the boss, and I had finally taken control of my life. After leaving Anna in the conference room, I expected her to process the revelation quietly, perhaps to retreat and figure out her next steps. I underestimated her desperation. By the time I returned to my office, my phone was already buzzing with her calls. I ignored each one, watching the notifications pile up without an ounce of guilt. For years, I had endured her sharp words, her dismissive tone, her complete lack of appreciation. Now, I could finally focus on myself without the weight of her negativity pressing down on me. But Anna? She wasn't about to give up that easily. It wasn't long before Sarah, my assistant, knocked on the door. She poked her head in, her expression a mixture of concern and amusement. "David," she began cautiously, "your wife is in the lobby. She's demanding to see you." I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "What's she doing now?" "She's talking to the receptionist, asking why she wasn't informed about your position sooner," Sarah replied. I chuckled softly. "She thinks she's entitled to that information?" Sarah shrugged, clearly uncomfortable. "Do you want me to call security?" "No need," I said, waving her off. "Let her stew for a bit. She'll leave when she realizes I'm not coming down." An hour passed, and Anna's persistence only grew. My phone lit up with calls, her number flashing repeatedly across the screen. I ignored each one, letting them go to voicemail. Every once in a while, I'd glance at the messages she sent. "David, we need to talk. I didn't mean what I said last night. Please call me. You're being childish. Come downstairs right now. David, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, I need to see you." The desperation in her messages shifted from frustration to panic, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. For years, she had held the power in our relationship, always in control, always dictating how things would go. Now, the tables had turned. By lunchtime, Sarah returned to my office, looking hesitant. "David, she's still here," she said. I looked up from my computer. "In the lobby?" Sarah nodded. "She's sitting in one of the chairs, pacing every so often, and glaring at anyone who tries to talk to her. It's a little awkward." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "All right, let's see if she'll take the hint." I grabbed my jacket and headed for the back exit of the building, avoiding the lobby entirely. I wasn't interested in another confrontation, especially not at work. I had said everything I needed to say in that conference room. As I walked to a nearby cafe, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Anna. It was my lawyer. I answered, grateful for the distraction. "David, I've been reviewing the documents you sent over," he said. "Everything looks solid. If you're ready to move forward with the divorce, we can file as early as tomorrow." "Do it," I said without hesitation. Are you sure? Sometimes emotions run high after big events like this. You might want to take a day or two to think about it, he advised. I've been thinking about it for years, I replied. I'm ready. After the call, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The decision was made. I was finally taking back control of my life, and nothing Anna said or did was going to change that. When I returned to the office, Sarah greeted me with a small smile. She's gone, she said. Finally, I muttered, heading back to my desk. But Anna's absence didn't mean the end of her attempts to reach me. That evening, as I sat in my quiet apartment, my phone buzzed with another call from her. I let it ring. Then came the messages. David, please. We can work this out. I didn't mean what I said. I was just upset. I love you, David. Don't throw everything away over one argument. I stared at the screen, shaking my head. If Anna had truly loved me, she would have respected me long before this moment. She wouldn't have waited until her pride was bruised to suddenly decide I was worth fighting for. I didn't respond. Not that night, and not the next day. Anna's desperation grew with each passing hour, but I stood firm. For years, I had been invisible in her eyes, just a foolish husband who couldn't survive without her. Now, she was learning the truth the hard way. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. By the third day, Anna's desperation had reached a fever pitch. My phone was a constant source of buzzing and ringing, calls, texts, voicemails, all from her. She was relentless, her messages swinging wildly between pleading, angry, and downright pitiful. I could almost predict the pattern. One minute, she'd beg for forgiveness, and the next, she'd lash out, blaming me for everything. David, I know I said things I didn't mean. Please call me so we can talk. You're seriously ignoring me like a child? Grow up and face me. I'm sorry. I'll do better. I'll change. Just come home, please. I read every message without responding. Not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't allow myself to be dragged back into the toxic cycle. Anna wasn't apologizing because she truly understood what she'd done wrong. She was panicking because she'd lost control, and she couldn't handle it. Work became my sanctuary during this time. In the office, I was respected, valued, and most importantly, in charge. My team had no idea what was happening in my personal life, and I intended to keep it that way. Professionalism was my armor, and I wore it well. But Anna wasn't content to let me have peace. She started showing up at places she thought I'd be. My favorite coffee shop, the park I often walked through during lunch breaks, even the building lobby. Each time, she tried to catch my attention, waving or calling my name. And each time, I walked away without acknowledging her. One afternoon, Sarah intercepted me before I could leave for a meeting. David, she said hesitantly, Anna's downstairs again. She's asking to see you. I sighed, rubbing my temples. What is she doing this time? She says it's urgent. She looks upset, Sarah said carefully. I leaned back in my chair, considering my options. Tell her I'm unavailable. If she needs to talk, she can send an email. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Got it. When I returned from my meeting, Sarah informed me that Anna had finally left, but not before causing a scene in the lobby. Apparently, she had yelled at the receptionist, accusing her of hiding me and threatening to report this whole company. The staff were professional enough not to mention it directly, but I could feel the tension in the air. Anna's behavior wasn't just embarrassing, it was disruptive. That evening, I found myself scrolling through her messages again. One in particular stood out. I'm scared, David. I don't know what to do without you. Please come back. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. We had been married for years, after all, and no matter how toxic things had become, it was hard to erase the good memories completely. But then I remembered the countless times she had dismissed me, belittled me, made me feel like I was nothing. I couldn't go back to that. Not now. Not ever. The next morning, my lawyer called with an update. David, we've officially filed the divorce papers. Anna will be served within the week, he said. Good, I replied. And just a heads up, if she contests it, things might get messy, he added. I'm prepared for that, I said firmly. But I wasn't entirely prepared for what came next. Later that day, Anna showed up at my apartment unannounced. I heard the knocking first, loud and insistent, followed by her voice calling my name. David, open the door. Please, I just want to talk. I sat on the couch, staring at the door, unmoving. I wasn't going to let her in. David, I know you're in there. Your car is outside, she shouted. I remained silent. After a few minutes, her tone changed. You're really not going to open the door? After everything we've been through? Still, I said nothing. Eventually, the knocking stopped, and I heard her footsteps retreating. I peeked through the peephole and saw her sitting on the steps, her head in her hands. She stayed there for nearly an hour before finally leaving. The guilt tried to creep in, but I pushed it away. I wasn't ignoring her out of spite. I was protecting myself. I had given Anna years of my life, years of patience and understanding, and she had thrown it all away. Now it was time for me to take care of myself. That night, I turned off my phone, locked the door, and poured myself a glass of wine. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. Anna could panic all she wanted, but I wasn't going to let her pull me back into her web. This was my life now, free, independent, and finally in control. By the time Anna was served with the divorce papers, I had already prepared myself for the inevitable fallout. I knew she wouldn't take it well. Her pride wouldn't let her. Still, I hoped she'd find some semblance of reason and accept the situation with grace. But, as always, Anna didn't disappoint in proving me wrong. The calls started almost immediately after she was served. At first, they were angry, filled with accusations and blame. You're doing this to humiliate me, aren't you? You're such a coward, David, hiding behind lawyers instead of facing me like a man. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? I ignored each message, my resolve unwavering. After a few days, the tone of her calls shifted. The anger was replaced with desperation, then pleading. David, please, we can fix this. I'll change, I promise. Don't throw away everything we've built. Think about us. You still love me, don't you? Tell me you do, and we'll figure this out. But I knew better. Anna wasn't sorry for how she had treated me. She was sorry for losing the control she thought she had over me. Her pleas weren't about love or reconciliation. They were about fear of losing the life she had built on the foundation of my silence and patience. One evening, she managed to get through to me before I could decline the call. Her voice was shaky, laced with a mixture of anger and sadness. David, how could you do this? Divorce? Really? We've been married for years. Are you really going to let it all end like this? I took a deep breath, keeping my tone calm. Anna, it's already ended. It ended the moment you decided I wasn't worth your respect. This isn't something I decided overnight. It's been a long time coming. You're overreacting, she exclaimed. Every couple fights, every marriage has its rough patches. You don't just quit when things get hard. This isn't about rough patches, Anna. This is about the way you've treated me for years. You called me a foolish husband who couldn't survive without you. You've belittled me, dismissed me, and never once saw me as your equal. I'm done being invisible in my own marriage. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, almost defeated. I didn't mean those things, David. I was just frustrated. I know you didn't mean them, I replied. That's the problem. They weren't calculated. They were how you really felt. And now, I'm choosing to walk away. David, please, she started, but I cut her off. Anna, this conversation is over. The papers have been filed. I wish you well, but this is the end. I hung up before she could respond, my heart heavy but resolute. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, reflecting on everything. The years of quiet suffering, the countless moments of disrespect, the love I had once felt for a woman who no longer existed. It all weighed on me. But beneath the sadness was a sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. Over the next few days, Anna's messages became less frequent. She seemed to realize I wasn't going to budge, and her desperation slowly gave way to silence. My lawyer informed me that she hadn't contested the divorce, which was a relief. I had braced myself for a fight, but it seemed Anna had finally accepted the inevitable. One day, I received a final text from her. "I don't know if you'll read this, but I want you to know I'm sorry. For everything. I wish things could have been different. Goodbye, David." I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. From that moment on, I focused entirely on rebuilding my life. My career flourished as I poured my energy into the company, and I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been buried under years of unhappiness. The decision to divorce Anna wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It was a choice that allowed me to reclaim my self-worth and prioritize my own happiness. And for that, I felt no regret. When the divorce was finalized, it felt like I had stepped out of a storm and into clear skies. The weight that had been pressing down on my shoulders for years was gone. It wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about reclaiming my life, my peace, and my sense of self-worth. I moved back into my work with a renewed focus, pouring my energy into the company. The office became my refuge, a place where I was respected and valued for my leadership and decisions. My team noticed the change in me. "You seem lighter," my assistant Sarah said one day, smiling as she placed some files on my desk. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." I didn't tell her about the divorce. It wasn't her business, and frankly, it didn't define me. But she was right. I did feel lighter, freer. I was no longer walking on eggshells at home or dreading the next argument. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. My evenings were quieter now, but they were mine. I started picking up old hobbies that I'd abandoned during my marriage. I dusted off my guitar, something I hadn't played since college, and spent hours relearning old songs. I went for long walks, enjoying the peace and solitude. I even started cooking for myself, experimenting with recipes instead of just throwing something together to avoid Anna's complaints. I also reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. During my marriage, I drifted away from them, partly because of Anna's controlling nature and partly because I was too exhausted to maintain those relationships. But now, I had the time and energy to rekindle those connections. One evening, I met up with my old college friend, Mike, for dinner. He had been one of the few people who had expressed concern about my marriage early on. "So, it's over?" Mike asked after I filled him in. "Yeah, it's over," I said, taking a sip of my drink. He nodded thoughtfully. "I'm not going to say I told you so, but I told you so." I laughed. "Yeah, you did. And I should have listened sooner. But you're free now," he said, raising his glass. "Here's to new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I agreed, clinking my glass against his. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. As time went on, I realized how much I had lost during my marriage. Not just my sense of independence, but also my confidence and joy. Slowly, I began to rebuild those parts of myself. But perhaps the biggest transformation was internal. I no longer felt the need to prove myself to anyone. I wasn't the quiet, foolish husband Anna had painted me as. I was a leader, a decision-maker, and a man who had reclaimed his life. One day, as I was reviewing some company plans in my office, Sarah walked in with a stack of documents. She placed them on my desk, then hesitated. "Something on your mind, Sarah?" I asked, looking up. She smiled. "Not really. It's nice to see you like this. You seem happier." I nodded. "I am happier." She nodded back, satisfied, and left the room. Her words stayed with me. I was happier. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself instead of bending to someone else's expectations. Every now and then, I thought about Anna, not with anger or bitterness, but with a sense of closure. I hoped she had found peace in her own way, just as I had. But I knew one thing for certain. I didn't miss her. This was my life now, a life I had rebuilt on my own terms, and I was finally at peace with that. I thought about Anna less and less as time passed. My days were full. Work kept me busy, old hobbies filled my evenings, and reconnecting with friends gave me the social life I'd sorely missed during my marriage. But then, one day, I heard from someone unexpected. My assistant Sarah knocked on my office door with an uncertain expression. "David, there's someone here to see you." She didn't have an appointment, but she said it's urgent. "Who is it?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. "Anna," Sarah said hesitantly. I sat back in my chair, momentarily at a loss. It had been months since I'd last spoken to her, and I wasn't eager to change that. Still, curiosity got the better of me. "Send her in," I said, though my voice betrayed none of the unease I felt. When Anna walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked different, frazzled, thinner, like she hadn't slept in days. Her once proud posture was gone, replaced by a hesitance I'd never seen in her before. "David," she said softly, her eyes scanning the room. I nodded toward a chair across from me. "Have a seat." She sat down, fidgeting with the strap of her handbag. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she took a deep breath and said, "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I needed to talk to you." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "What's on your mind, Anna?" She hesitated, as though trying to find the right words. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. "I didn't realize how much I was hurting you until you were gone," she said, her voice trembling. "You didn't deserve the way I treated you. I was selfish, and I took you for granted." Her words were unexpected, but they didn't have the impact she might have hoped for. I'd spent too many years waiting for an apology like this, only to realize that it wouldn't change anything. "Why now?" I asked, my tone calm but firm. She blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean? Why are you apologizing now? Because you feel guilty? Or because you realized what you lost?" Her face fell, and I saw the truth written all over it. She wasn't here because she had suddenly grown a conscience. She was here because she was struggling without me. "I don't know how to answer that," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "That's what I thought." "David, I'm trying," she said, her tone growing desperate. "I want to make things right. I want us to try again." I shook my head. "Anna, there's no going back. What we had, it's gone. You destroyed it, piece by piece, every time you dismissed me, insulted me, and treated me like I was less than you." Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy, but it wasn't enough to change my mind. "I've moved on," I continued. "I'm happy now, Anna. Happier than I've been in years. I'm not going to jeopardize that by going back to a relationship that drained the life out of me." Her tears began to fall, but she didn't argue. Instead, she nodded slowly, as if she'd finally accepted the truth. "I understand," she said, her voice shaky. I wanted you to know that I regret everything. And I'm sorry." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Thank you for saying that." She stood up, clutching her handbag tightly. "I won't bother you again, David. I promise." I watched as she walked out of my office, her shoulders slumped, her head down. And for the first time, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not pity. Just nothing. Anna's regret came too late, but it didn't matter. I had already moved on. That evening, as I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, I thought about how far I'd come. My life was my own now, free from the weight of a toxic relationship. Anna's regret was hers to carry, not mine. I smiled to myself, the cool night air brushing against my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. Weeks after Anna's visit to my office, I thought I had seen the last of her. My life had settled into a rhythm of peace and productivity, and I was fully focused on the future. Then, out of nowhere, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name written in neat, familiar handwriting. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside was a short, handwritten note. "David, I know you've moved on, and I respect that. But there's something you need to know about our time together. I made mistakes, and one of them was keeping a secret that I thought would protect us both. It's not my place to carry it anymore. You deserve the truth. Check the enclosed envelope. I hope it gives you closure. Hannah." At first, I dismissed it as another attempt to pull me back into her web of manipulation. But then I saw the smaller envelope tucked inside, sealed and marked with my initials. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Inside was a hospital document. My eyes scanned the words, and my breath caught in my throat. Under my name was a declaration I never expected to see: 99.9% match father. My hands trembled as I read the rest of the document, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't Martin's name on the form. It was someone else's. A child I didn't know existed. The date on the form matched the early years of our marriage, a time when I had been too buried in work to notice much else. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations and moments I had dismissed as inconsequential. Had Anna hidden a pregnancy from me? Had she given up the child without telling me? I called my lawyer immediately, forwarding the document and asking for an investigation. Days later, the truth came to light. Anna had been pregnant in the first year of our marriage. But the child wasn't missing. They had been placed for adoption, a decision Anna had made without consulting me. When confronted, Anna admitted everything. "I thought you wouldn't want the responsibility," she said over the phone, her voice hollow. "I thought I was doing what was best for both of us. But I see now I was wrong." The revelation left me shaken but resolute. Anna's choices had robbed me of something precious, but they also reinforced the truth I had come to accept. She and I had never been partners. I decided to track down the child, not to disrupt their life, but to ensure they knew the truth about where they came from. It wasn't closure I had sought, but in uncovering this final secret, I found a deeper purpose. Sometimes, the end of one story is the beginning of another. And this one? It was mine to write.